So let's try this again. My name is King Ray Vet, and early this morning, I made a whole video. I think it was 43 minutes or something like that. And I'll be damned if the whole thing didn't end up so out of sync that there was no way I could use it. I did not want to upload it because it was making me dizzy on the playback. Um, I mean, have you ever tried to watch a 43-minute video where the words are out of sync with, the visual? Insane. And this platform has only been able to make videos probably for the last year or two. And so it's not the best platform. If it does it this time, I will switch to YouTube because they're a lot more ahead of the game than Substack. Substacks doesn't cater to computers, they cater to phones, and it's just getting on my nerves because I'm a computer user and they're not going to make me extinct. At least that's what I say. Anyway, so then I made the whole video. It kept frustrating me because I kept playing back thinking that something different would happen, and when it didn't, I finally deleted it 5 minutes before it was to publish. I was going to publish it at 8 o'clock in the morning. Um, and I was playing with it from 4:30 to no, from about 5:30 to 8 o'clock in the morning, like 10 minutes to 8. I deleted it instead of saving it so that I can remember what I was talking about. So now I've got to try to recreate that all over again, which is a total bummer. Listen, and I'm only going to talk for maybe 5-10 minutes here to see if it's out of sync again. And so there may be two videos because if it doesn't do it this time, then I'll pick up where I left off. How about that? So I'm making this video because, well, I had a chat with a dear friend, and we were going back and forth and back and forth about, uh, to me, the disconnect with people from the civil rights era into the 21st century. And the conversation that I was having with her was a different conversation than she was trying to have with me. Um, I was talking about the self-centeredness of people today compared to the civil rights era, which I just said the 1960s, but it can include the 1960s, the 1970s, and the 1980s, where people were a lot more unified. People were a lot less afraid of each other, even though I say, for the most part, people are afraid of each other. I mean, there's so much going on in the world that it's hard not to be a little bit afraid of what you might run into out there, or you're living in your past and something happened to you in your past and you're living out of that. So and then I wrote some notes, but I'm not going to refer to them right at the moment. Um, and what I was telling her was that, look, I grew up without the internet. The internet didn't come into focus until the 1990s. So I had already lived almost 30 years without the internet. Without the internet, you have to learn to talk to people or be so far left behind that there's just no way, you'll end up, to me, severely damaged if you try to live life with no communication at all with other human beings. God, whatever put us here. If it was meant for us to be alone, we would have been alone, but we weren't. There's 7 billion people on the planet. So, not to have learned how to communicate with your fellow human beings is almost like a crime, and it's showing up so much right now. So I had to learn to talk to people, and I was in a little bit different situation than a lot of people because of how I grew up. Um, in all white neighborhoods where there was only two of us in my grade school, two of us in junior high until I got to the ninth grade. Then our sisters went into the seventh grade while we were in the ninth grade. So there was four of us. And then I went to high school and it was back to two of us. I After my parents divorced, um, I went to live with my father, and my sister went to live with my mother out in California. And I convinced him to let me go to a integrated school, a public school, my senior year, and I only had to go for one semester. So, but I came back to graduate in June. At any rate, the unity that people had back then was something to behold. Um, People did not care; they just talked to each other. They communicated, and I don't know where the bottom fell out. I think it was a combination of the internet, social media, definitely social media, that has people hiding behind the internet. Is hurting them. It's hurting them by a long shot. It's hurting them in business. It's hurting them in intimate relationship. It's hurting them in friendships. It's hurting them in their relationships with their family members. It's just plain hurting people not to learn to communicate. Now, I was a very quiet child. Um, I never said much at all. All I did was play a lot of sports. I took after my father, and I was in observation mode until I got to high school. Um, and then drugs and alcohol brought me out of my shell. So I'm not sure that was even genuinely bringing me out of my shell because I had to be fucked up to do it. So I was say no, no, I wasn't completely out of my shell, and I did not know how to communicate. Um, there was a couple of people that I could talk to, and then I talked to them a lot, but it was only those two. But somewhere in my latter teens, I realized I could not talk, but I could write. I'd been writing since I was either in grade school or junior high because my mother had an electric typewriter in her bedroom. First, she had one of those old fashioned typewriters that you really had to pound. And you can see them on the internet. You really had to pound the keys to get them to, type anything. Then she traded that in for an electric typewriter. And I was on that thing all the time. I taught myself how to type. And I was typing something like 65 words a minute by the time I got in the eighth grade. And I took a typing class because I figured I'd ace that. And the teacher said, wait a minute, how come you type so fast already and accurately? I said, oh, my mom had a typewriter in the bedroom. So he tested me a week into the class. I aced it, of course, and was typing. I didn't need that class. So he let me go the rest of the year, with the rest of the semester without going to class. He just gave me an A. But I say all that to say I could write, but I could not talk. I suffered from what grown ass adults are suffering from now, and I'll get into that in a bit here. But I realized that when I was when I was in my latter teens, that there was just something crippling about the fact that I had so many problems communicating. So what I did was I would have conversations with people or want to have conversations with people or had conversations with people and had some afterthoughts. And I would type them out or write them out by hand. I also wrote a lot too. I have very good penmanship, very good penmanship. Um, and I would read things back to people over the phone without them knowing that I was reading. That's how I learned to talk the way that I write. Um, and it was such a thing for me that I no longer needed the paper after about 6 months to a year of doing that. Then, so I got much better. Then, when I was 26 years old, I got clean and sober and entered the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the sharing that went on there, I picked up on that very, very quickly. In fact, I shared so much, so often that people, I got asked to do a speakers meeting. I asked to be the pre-speaker of a speakers meeting. Why is it so hot in here? I don't know why I'm so hot. So I was asked to be part of this speakers meeting, and they thought I had 6 months when I only had 90 days. But that's because I shared so much at from my heart in the halls of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then I didn't stop there. I got involved in a business that had a 7-month training program for public speaking. And I did not get certified during that 7 months. And I thought at the end, I thought, oh shit, this was so difficult. I mean, it turned me inside out, upside down, all of us, hundreds of us. It was so hard. It was tougher than boot camp. Um, because they wanted you to be transformed in order to public speak about transformation. So, but I didn't get certified. So they came back at the very end and asked me to coach the next training session. So I did it another 7 months. I got certified along with the guys that I was coaching. Um, I think it was 3 or 4 of them, but I got certified along with them. And it was, oh God, that was one of the highlights of my life. So see, I didn't stop there. Now, ask yourself something. Yeah, you ask yourself, why was I more inclined to grow in that area than people are today? Why? Um, there was something in me that just couldn't, I didn't want, okay, I was an overachiever. And there was something in me that did not want to stand for my own status quo, grow, change, transform, do whatever I had to do to become a better human being, to become more successful in what I was doing in life. And I couldn't afford not to pay attention uh, to my own growth. What are people doing today? They're blaming everything. They're full of excuses. They're full of, they're just not on the same page as I was. But then I come to find out these days, because I keep bumping into people that are my age, they're boomers, and they were like I was. So something happened between the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and then people were born in the 90s on up. Something happened where that whole bottom fell out. Now I'm going to stop this video and make sure it does not have that sync problem. Be right back.